right away. Feel the pain of this. Physically, emotionally. Your kids are worried you're gonna die. They cry themselves to sleep. Feel that pain. Like your wife is worried you're gonna abandon her with nothing. She doesn't know how she's gonna pay the bills. Feel the pain of that. You cannot get through 15 seconds on the fucking stairs without vomiting. Feel that. Like you want it to hurt. I want it to hurt you so much that you will move. I don't give a what you think of me. That needs to hurt.
Jillian Michaels, you have coached a lot of people when you were the coach hosting Biggest Loser. Okay, that's a lot of people know you for that.
Right.
But what they may not stop and look at is what did you actually learn about weight loss, about obesity in that process? Because you can be a practitioner and do whatever and be an MD, this and that, but you were legitimately in the trenches and like had this sheer amount of volume of people coming through that you were almost given free rein to experiment on.
Honestly, that is exactly what happened.
I don't think it would
for better or for
I don't even know if
worse.
it would fly today.
Oh, I doubt it.
Yeah. So it's like
I doubt it.
You were in a period of time when you were, you could experiment. And I think I want to know, like, what did you, being in the trenches, really learn about obesity and weight loss?
Yeah, gosh. Okay, this is long. I might start to ramble, so rein me back in. To give you a little history first and to set it up appropriately, I began training people at 17 years old, a little certification from ACE. I never dealt with people that were morbidly obese. This is Los Angeles. You know, I would train Vanessa Marcel to be ready for, a movie with Nicolas Cage. I would train Amanda P to be ready for a movie with Ashton Kutcher, like soccer moms that wanted to go from a size 6 to a 2. Like that's what I was doing. Now, because I was an overweight kid, I had engaged in every trend you could possibly imagine, from fasted cardio and cybergenics and different pills and the master cleanse and any supplement you could friggin' imagine. I took it. I was even so crazy as a kid, and I'm willing to accept how utterly stupid and irresponsible this was. I would go to Mexico to get asthma medication. Do you remember clenbuterol or this just, and with it. Yep. So dumb. And by the way, I have a massive, and a heart murmur. Yeah. That's what made me, I'm not kidding. I went to get a physical and they were like, you have a mild heart murmur. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Never messed with it again. But by the way, when you would get off of it, you gain all the way back and then some. Like I did all of the stupid things on myself first. So I was constantly curious to see like how fit could I get? How lean could I get? And I come from the generation that had Madonna super fit in the 90s or Linda Hamilton doing pull-ups in the beginning of Terminator 2. So that was the aspirational thing from my generation. I wish it had been like bigger boobs and bigger because it would have been easier at the time. That said, I was prone to experimenting with anything and everything already, but I didn't have the experience with working to help individuals who were, quite honestly, morbidly obese, hundreds of pounds overweight. So the producers put this show together on NBC, and they're interviewing trainers throughout Los Angeles. And I happened to be one of the people they're interviewing. And I didn't even want to do it because I didn't like the name. And it was during a period of time where you had the Swan, and nothing good was coming out of reality TV. And honestly, it's arguable whether anything still does. So I was like, I don't think this is going to be a good idea. I think they're going to try to humiliate people that are overweight. And at that time, I had a little sports medicine facility and a personal training gym attached. And I was thinking I was going to franchise that business. I was looking at things like Curves and wanting to follow that business model. I wasn't thinking that I was ever going to be a brand. That was never my goal.
I put a link down below for Thrive Market. I know this is a relevant pitch for them, but at the same time, it makes sense. There's a 30% off discount link down below. Thrive Market is an online membership-based grocery store, and it literally is their mission to make healthier food more available for people in areas that cannot get healthier food. They really wanted to make sustainability a real thing and be able to get real good, unprocessed, and even healthier processed food options into people's hands. So that link down below is a 30% off discount link for whatever you choose. You can fill up your grocery cart using that link, 30% off plus a free $60 gift. So 30% off whether you choose some beet chips or whether you choose Satiety tortilla chips instead of regular corn chips, or if you want jerky snacks or this or that. And a lot of the times it's gonna be much, much cheaper than you would find at many grocery stores. So that link is down below. It's in the top line of the description underneath this video. And again, 30% off and a free $60 gift.
So I didn't see a way that this would advance my career. And the long and the short of it is, one of the clients at my gym who had put me up for the job was like, "You're insane." I happened to get it. I think because I probably didn't care. He's like, "You're insane. You have to take it. They're going to make you into like the Dr. Phil of fitness trainers." Because Dr. Phil was Dr. Phil at that time, right? He was still on Oprah back in the day. Do the job. I take the job, and the show was irrefutably, at inception, meant to embarrass people that were overweight. There were temptations in the house back in the early days where they would have all over the house to tempt them, torture them. They'd have challenges that bear no valid reason for existing on the show, of like jump into a car window this big. I wasn't a producer on the show. Bob wasn't a producer on the show. We didn't have any say-so about any of that ever at any point, which is another reason there was there were many reasons, but a constant friction between myself and the producers. So the long and the short of it, the reason I'm saying this is because, I don't know, Bob and I go to work. It's week 1, season 1. And we're like, okay, I guess we're just going to beat the shit out of these guys and see what happens. I don't know. And I cut their calories. Some. And all of a sudden, I'll never forget it. They're getting on the scale and it's like 20 pounds gone. Mind you, so much of that was water, but I didn't, you don't know at the time. You're just in the free fall of this, flying by the seat of your pants. And we were like, oh my God, we're golden gods of fitness. Look at what we've done. This is incredible. So the next week we're like, we're going to get 21 pounds off of them. And they all gained weight back. And that's when I was like, what the are we doing here? And of course it had to do with an electrolyte imbalance and fluid fluctuation. But we had no idea what we were doing. It was all theoretical. And that's a perfect example of the potential for what we were doing and the fact that we had no clue what we were doing. So now, over the 10 years that I was on that show, and you would get multiple seasons in a year, you have a group of people that you are essentially running experiments on constantly. And the thing is, I know where they netted out because they would be dunked every week. They would have hydration tests. There would be DEXA scans. I know I would see them get off of their medications. So I'm not guessing at it. That's the other thing. And it's a competition, meaning your goal is to perfect, because if you don't, somebody goes home. So now then, are there a lot of things wrong with this show? Absolutely. Should weight loss be gamified? No, probably not. And should people be sent home on a weight loss journey because they've been voted off the island? Of course not. That's totally counterintuitive to a healthy journey with losing weight. People make a lot of claims about that show. None of them are true. Where the show went wrong is there was no sustainable way for them to deal with the deeper issues that brought them to being overweight in the first place, having been on the show 2 weeks, right? Nothing's going to get fixed there. So it had a lot of problems with not dealing with the mental issues, with having them be there a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks and go home. It triggered a lot of them to feel like they weren't cared for when they would get eliminated, and they'd be angry about it, and understandably so. No one managed any of that properly. It was totally irresponsible that way. as a trainer on the show, my job was help them lose weight, help them do it safely, keep them around as long as possible. With all the time I have, try to help them understand why they put on the weight in the first place. And I am not a psychoanalyst. My mom is. Therefore, I understand how important it is. And I sure wish we had one on the show. I can do the general stuff, but almost every one of those contestants needed a psychoanalyst to really understand you don't get to 500 pounds because you like Twinkies or because you're lazy. None of that's true. It's because the food is providing them with something so deep and so primal that they're not even aware of. It could be that they were an incest survivor and they've desexualized by putting on a couple 100 pounds. It could be that the mother was obese and the only way that the son could bond with her was by also being obese. There's a million reasons they all had. Anyway, these were the bigger issues with the show. But it wasn't the diet or exercise. None of them came out worse the wear until finale. And this is when I actually quit the show so permanently. They would go home, and then when you have a show that you get rewarded for losing the most amount of weight, what happens when you're done? What happens when you don't need to lose more weight and in fact should not lose more weight and you've got $100,000 on the line? We had a contestant who was not my contestant, and I still profited off of The Biggest Loser. I take responsibility for being a part of a show that allowed this to happen. Personally, I wouldn't have allowed it to happen, but I profited off of a platform that did. And this is when I was like, okay, I'm complicit and I have to leave. But a contestant named Rachel Fredrickson walked out onto the stage during the finale. I hadn't seen her. Bob hadn't seen her. And she was unhealthily thin, to say the least. These are all, and nothing good came out of that. I am 100% positive with regard to her health. That I will put all here. Go ahead and hate on it. Hate on me for being a part of it. Have at it. But the rest of it is just wrong. Diet and exercise work. They work great. And the reason they gained the weight back is not because the diet and exercise don't work or they rebounded from this crazy refeeding syndrome. Not unless they starved themselves for the finale, which 99.9% of them actually didn't and looked amazing. It works amazing. So let's talk about the fine tuning of that. That is the reason that when it comes to weight loss, I would challenge anyone in the world and say, I'll beat you. There's just no way you can compete against me. I've done it. I've run every course. I know every single thing. I know how many calories is 1 calorie too much. I know how many reps is 1 rep too much. And what I mean by 1 rep too much or 1 step too much, I had this down to such science that it would be X amount of calories to the letter, X amount of steps to the letter, X amount of strength to the letter, X amount of progressions to the letter, to the point that, I just did not lose. Because when you're like, you know what, we did 10,000 steps today or 10 miles or something, right? What if we do 11? What if more is more? And it would, you would always know when you were at the point of diminishing returns, when it was too much physical stress, when it was too few calories. And that's the thing, they starved them. The truth of the matter is 800 calories and unlimited greens, you can call it whatever you want. They didn't lose any muscle. They got off of all their medications. They looked amazing. They felt amazing. That is not why they gained their weight back. They gained their weight back because the issues that were with them in the first place were not fixed. That's the bottom line. So you could ask me any question. You think I didn't try keto? Of course I did. You think I didn't try fasted cardio? 100 times. You think I didn't count macros? There's not one thing I didn't do. And there's not one thing I didn't measure at the end of the week. So when they measure them, they put them in the dunk and the DEXA and the this and the that and did a blood draw and a hydrate. I know everything. And that's why I was able to even figure out, okay, if we do, this is so crazy that I would count the amount of shirts they would sweat through to know how much sodium bicarbonate I needed to replace. There's no way you could beat me at it because it would be your first time. You could read 1 million papers. You could go in there with all the science. But the reality of when you're doing it, you're not going to know until you know. It is trial and error. And there is an adherence component. But when it comes to losing weight, the bottom line is it's calories in, calories out. There's really only, I hate to tell you, I wouldn't do more than 4 hours of strength training a week. Whenever I did, diminishing returns. It just didn't, there was no benefit. It's not like if you're trying to gain muscle.
Yeah, it's a different
conversation. This is where I say, I think of trainers, actual fitness trainers, which I actually am, even though I don't get to do it nowadays. We subspecialize. If you come to me and you say, I'm going to be playing Superman, I'm going to be like, go see Gunnar. He's great at this. But if you came to me and you said, I need to lose 50 pounds to play Superman, then I'd be like, yeah, I got you. When? 5 minutes? Great. I mean, that's how much down to a science I have. And it really does net out to, you can't starve the weight off of them. That's a lie. You can't. The math isn't there. Mm-hmm. It's not there. This is where they're like, well, how much of it is diet and how much of it is exercise? I can tell you exactly. It's all exercise. In large part, the diet holds them at a neutral.
Yeah.
And what I mean is, we've been actively gaining, right? So let's imagine that's reverse. If the body is analogous to a car, the car's in reverse, it's putting weight on. I use diet as a hold. It's a maintenance mode. Now, 800 calories was particularly low because I was eking out, their BMR for being larger was high. Mm-hmm. Some of them were some of the girls were at almost 3,000. So I was able to get almost a pound out of that, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you go home over a pound, I'm going to take it every single week. And I had, ironically, enough energy because it was like we had enough carbohydrates and we had enough protein and they had all that stored energy in body fat. Like they were going fine. Mm-hmm. There no nutrient deficiencies, zero. So when you're looking at, 800 for girls was the floor. And the greens, I just used to fill them up all day long. I was like, hungry? Here's a bowl of broccoli. Here's a plate of asparagus. I don't give if you don't like it, eat it. Eat it. You had complete adherence, which is not real life. But what I can tell you is whenever I work with someone, I'm like, go crazy with the greens. Load up, go nuts.
Asparagus, would it be totally bland, or would you, because if you were controlling salt, could you not season it? Could you?
I only controlled, you know what? Let me tell you another mistake that we made. We were so stupid that in the beginning, we cut all salt.
That triggers a feedback loop that makes them retain like crazy too.
I used to think, give me a little kindness on this one because this was 15 years ago. I used to think for sure the producers were fixing the show because I was like, how is this possible? I just get on the scale and just gain 10 pounds. How? So I ended up meeting with a registered dietitian who worked with Olympians. And she's like, you've got a massive electrolyte imbalance. No one's working with you. I didn't understand it. This is what I mean. Like you learn in the free fall of it. And then she explained the importance of electrolytes. And I was able to take sodium bicarbonate. And then I would have an electro mix, which had a certain amount of potassium and a certain amount of magnesium. And I would count the shirts they sweat through to measure out how much bicarbonate I gave them. That's how meticulous I got until I never had that happen again. But it would happen all the time. All the time in the beginning. And the doctor from Harvard didn't get it. This is why I didn't really get along with him, because I was like, you're the MD. Like, how do you not see this when you're doing their tests and everything? How does nobody see this? So I started going outside for information, which is why I ended up talking to all these different doctors over the years. And then, for example, we'd have contestants with PCOS. They were all diabetic or pre-diabetic, but hypothyroidism. And you would see that, yes, it would impact them, which really sucked. You'd have one girl lose 6 while the others would lose 8. And that was the one that had PCOS or struggled with hypothyroidism, which wasn't actually as difficult as PCOS. That was a tough one. Not to say you cannot lose weight with PCOS. Were they losing 8 pounds a week like the other girls? No, it would be 6. It would be more slow going, a little more difficult. Mm-hmm. But I would then go talk to an endocrinologist and say like, am I supposed to keep them on this? We're weaning them off of this. We're taking them off of all of these drugs. Are they and they would say, no, you're not supposed to take them off of this for that and this for that. But this doctor would just take everybody off of everything. And we would go to war constantly because outside doctors who subspecialize would tell me, like, you need to be giving them this, you need to be giving them that, don't take away this, they shouldn't be coming off of that. Ultimately, we did get them off of medications, but he would just pull them, all of them, metformin, all of it. And you begin to, learn like this needs to be more gradual. They need to be weaned off of these things. But there ultimately is the macronutrient ratio did not matter. The only reason it would matter is if they were more tired without the carbs. Didn't matter. I didn't get better numbers. Fasted cardio didn't work at all. I mean, now we know it's like doesn't help. But with that said, it didn't work, and I had diminishing returns because they were tired. So I didn't get a better workout out of them. Ask me a question about anything and I'll tell you how it panned out because I tried it. So if you went lower with the calories, it wouldn't work. The body would just, and you would gain back the next week. It would lose less. It would hold on. It would fight more. You'd have refeeding syndrome. Somehow their base metabolic rate, which would make sense because it's like, okay, no way. We're not going to do it. I'm going to shift my biochemistry and I'm going to hold on like crazy and I'm going to slow down my metabolic rate and release more stress hormone. And there was a threshold, and that number unequivocally was 800 calories for girls and 1,600 for men and unlimited greens. And the burn, the guys, I would take to 8,500 calories burned a day.
Okay.
And you had to do it a certain way. No more than 4 hours of resistance training. We would do no more than 3 10-minute sessions of HIIT a week Tabata protocol. So I would do 4 on, 2 off, 4 on, and then recover. So really it was, I don't know if you count the recovery time, they would do 2 sets of 4 minutes separated. I would have tons of recovery in between the training sessions. I would leave at least 2 days per muscle group. So splits, I would do splits. Because remember, I'm not trying to make them grow. I'm trying to make them smaller. Mm-hmm. So I would do push and pull splits and separate the days so I could get a good amount of recovery and I could minimize any risk of injury because we weren't doing a ton of intensity stuff. And I would literally walk, I would call it the walk to China. I would take one off the treadmill, train that one, they would all be walking to China. Take the next one off the treadmill, train that one, they'd all be walking to China. I told you I would take my horse into the mountains and they would follow me for hours. We would be in the pool, on the elliptical, on the row machine, hiking in the mountains for hours. They never stopped moving. It was all what is now called level 2 cardio. Mm-hmm. But it's because it was just extra credit calorie burn without all of the added stress. It didn't trigger that hold, that stress mechanism that would come from cutting the calories too low, too much training, all of that stuff, you'd hit a wall. Mm-hmm. And there is no more up button from there. There just isn't. And no matter what you do with the macros or manipulating the timing, none of that mattered. It doesn't matter. Weight loss, health, I don't know. Obviously, you could get into different conversations. No, don't eat before bed. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do this. Sure. But
how did you control for sleep? Like, because that's probably such a big variable with people, just their own, their psychology plays a role in just how well they sleep. And I'm sure you notice like sleep there's
stress
even
too.
The water retention that comes from when you're sleep deprived. It's like we've all experienced that. It's like you don't sleep for a couple
I
nights.
could get right through the water retention. See, here's the thing. If you were to ask me to extrapolate this to everyday life, I would choose the harder stuff. I would say, okay, let's do 4 training sessions and the 3 HIIT sessions, and you can't recommend 800 calories. People can't do it. But that's where I would say, let's meet your metabolism with what you're burning in a day, and we're going to get the rest off with exercise, because you can't starve the weight off. It doesn't work. You're just going to your metabolism over time and lose muscle. That's why these drugs don't work and people are losing so much muscle, because they're just starving the weight off. You'll lose it, but you'll plateau, gain it back again over time, and you'll have a muscle loss on top of it. So that's why the exercise is such a critical component in weight loss, is because it's where you're burning through all of that stored fat. So the sleep part, I would prioritize it obviously as best I could. They'd have nighttime challenges. They'd be stressed out about their families. But with the water, I would know that I learned how to manage the water weight like counting cards in Las Vegas. Because here's the problem. If we sweat 5 pounds before a weigh-in, and the next week you sweat 4, they're going to gain a pound of water back, and someone goes home. I would have to know exactly where their water was. And I would do it by how much water are we consuming? How much are you sweating? I swear to God. Not that I think that is manageable. It's not. Not that I recommend. Here's my line on sleep. Prioritize out of it. Like stop eating 3 hours before bed. Try to let yourself wake up naturally if you have that luxury. Aim to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Sleep in a cold room, sleep in a dark room, all the common sense stuff. Prioritize your sleep. I prioritize my sleep. If I have the option of sleeping 6 hours and getting a workout in, or sleeping 8 hours, but I don't have time to work out, I take the 8 hours and I don't work out. Because I'm not trying to lose weight. I don't need to exercise it off. I can maintain my physique with what I'm eating. And if I manage my stress and my sleep, like maintenance is a very different thing. Because you can build off of those principles, but you drink water until your pee looks like lemonade. Perfect. If you're sweating excessively, get a little electro mix and some coconut water with a pinch of sea salt. You think I'm giving regular people sodium bicarbonate? No. But it's an ergogenic aid. There's no question. It allowed them to perform better. I mean, I'm talking to the milligrams of caffeine that I was allowed to give them, which ended up becoming a whole thing. But nevertheless, that was the one thing that you really couldn't control. And you were still able to manage it while not ideal. Because they did get enough. It was just tough with the actual production schedule. They'd have to be up early and to bed late. I would also trick the satiety hormones with the fiber. Crazy amount. I would even have them taking psyllium husks to make sure that I could manage the feelings of hunger, to make them feel full. Hence the reason I had them eating so much fiber all the time, because it was like a draw. The amount of energy it takes to process plain asparagus is practically the amount that's in the asparagus. It was so minimal that I just played with volume all the time. Would fill them up on fiber and phytonutrients and water. And then they would have 800 calories would be like protein, fat, and some complex carbohydrates. And I'd let them with the ratio depending upon what gave them better energy, honestly.
Yeah, I think that was what it just comes down to. It's just what actually, because you were running them so hard in terms of the workouts. That just comes down to that, like what's going to give you the energy to perform this. Did any like non-nutritive sweeteners at all, or is that just completely out?
Beginning. Yeah. In the beginning, I had all of that crap in the house. Splenda and all of it was all in the house. And I didn't even cross my mind. The unfortunate irony is they still did fine on it. But again, where does health and weight loss intersect on our Venn diagram? Just because I will always say you can't be healthy at any size. That's a lie. You can be unhealthy at any size. Just because you're small, just because we're taking weight off you. And there is the halo effect of weight loss. We all know this. You could look at the Twinkie diet from Mark Haub. Like the study where he ate nothing but garbage for 2 months and I think lost 27 pounds, just eating less garbage. Mm-hmm. And his biomarkers improved, total cholesterol, triglycerides, all got better. Not from the Twinkie, but from becoming leaner, period. And you see that even with weight loss drugs. Are like, well, look at the heart health benefits. There's nothing in the drug that's doing that. It's the weight loss that's facilitating that benefit. But the honest reality is, I mean, you ask me anything, that's where I kind of come back to the extrapolation being eat whole food. Calories in, calories out really does matter. Over time, will the quality of your food impact your BMR? Yeah, over a long time. So, I mean, the reality is, will artificial sweeteners mess up your gut microbes, and will that arguably impact how your body absorbs nutrients, or how your body is synthesizing hormone? Maybe, possibly, sure, could. There's some data says maybe, I don't know. This is where health is common sense, but weight loss is math. I can feed you poison and get it off of you in the same amount of time. So, of course, I would love somebody to eat like wild organic blueberries and pasteurized eggs and wild caught salmon. That's my dream. Within a calorie controlled amount, exercising, and I would prioritize the strength training and the HIIT training over level 2 target all day long. Because if you don't have weight to lose, I know, Peter, I get it, and the pyramid and the zone,
Yep.
all the, it's so good. Longevity, I understand it. I have a walking pad when I do my work on my treadmill.
I think you and I are aligned with Rhonda Patrick on that. Rhonda Patrick's big on the vigorous.
I am big on the vigorous.
I feel like the zone 2, and I've talked about this before. I love my zone 2. Don't get me wrong. I like going for walks, but I'm not sitting here unless I'm deliberately training to build base, which is something for endurance work. Sure. But like zone 2 is just like, I call that life. Like that's like going for walks. That's maybe throwing a backpack on and going for a walk, but I'm not typically consciously thinking of that as exercise.
For weight loss, it's extra credit.
It's extra credit.
That's how I get those numbers.
I think the bigger, I don't know. And some people don't.
But do you have 100 pounds to lose?
No. Exactly.
That's what I mean. I don't do it.
Yeah.
I do it when I'm working on my computer on a walking pad. Or if I really don't have time for the gym because I have so much to do, I'll go to the gym, get on the Stairmaster, put a bunch of power dots all over my body like a psychopath, and answer emails on my phone because I really need to be working. So I'm like, how can I kind of combine these two things? But it's not a workout. Yeah. You and I are a different beast. But if I'm trying to take 100 pounds off of somebody in 6 weeks, I can live there.
Yeah, that becomes your new baseline. That's just your new baseline. I mean, especially if you could have those people just at least moving at least a zone 1 or zone 2 all day. That's what we would do. That's new baseline. That's just all it is. This has become your new home.
Yep.
Yeah. And do you think that being able to consume wholesome, nutrient-rich food would elicit sort of a self-governing effect on appetite, knowing kind of what you know now? This is an interesting question to ask people. Like where it's harder to not simply by sheer volume of food, but by the fact that could there be a feedback loop somewhere that says, hey, we have enough nutrition, so there's a self-governing aspect that says, I'm just not going to.
Here's the science I tend to believe on it, but I think the psychological component is so much stronger, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Is like, I don't know if you've interviewed Dr. Robin Chutkan yet. If you haven't, you should. She's incredible. And she will tell you that by eating fruits and vegetables, the microbes in your gut, I don't even understand it. I can't even repeat it. You'd have to listen to the podcast or interview her yourself. But the long story short of it is when you eat these foods, the microbes in your gut release post-chain fatty acids, postbiotics, and these increase your desire, your ability to enjoy these foods. They improve your taste buds for these kinds of foods. And therefore, when we eat these foods, we crave them more. And all this fake food has messed up our ability to enjoy natural food. Then the argument, if you got Dr. Anna Lemke, who talks about dopamine addiction and these foods, these processed foods are smashing the dopamine center of your brain. You can't even think straight. You're chemically addicted to the food. It takes 30 days to detox before you can even begin to look at deeper issues of food addiction. So I think that if you can get them off of their chemical addiction to these fake foods, I buy into that dopamine concept all day long. I also buy into the hormonal component of If I eat protein and fat, it's going to release satiety hormones. If I eat fiber, it's going to release satiety hormones. If I drink a soda, there's no fiber, there's no protein, there's no fat. It's going to spike my blood sugar, crash my blood sugar, and then I'm going to be hungry again. So it's totally counterintuitive because I have no satiety hormones being released. And the opposite is happening where I'm becoming hypoglycemic because I've now cleared all the sugar out of my blood from the sugar spike. So chemically, I think it takes about 30 days. I think we can reform somebody. But then why doesn't it work long term? Meaning, why do 95% of the people that lose a large amount of weight put it back on? And the reality that no one accepts regarding Biggest Loser is we have a 35% success rate. That's phenomenal. But instead, everyone's like, they put their weight back on. No, not all of them. No, they didn't. 65% did. Yeah. And we're beating the odds by 30%. Yeah. But this is where I'm going to tell you that the stories these people have that didn't always make it onto TV are not pretty. Yeah. You know, I had a contestant named Shay that I'm still close with. And her mother was a heroin addict that used to turn tricks for heroin while she was locked in a closet. I mean, come on. Yeah. You wonder why she's 500 pounds? Like, that's the tip of the iceberg with what this woman went through. So that stuff doesn't get resolved on Biggest Loser. So while I wonder, does eating better facilitate better habits? Why do they put it back on then? There's a period where we got them going great. There's a period where we've broken the chemical addiction, right? There's this, if I'm following all these rules that all these people are telling me, I've got to be eating good food. Where's the feedback loop? Why doesn't it stick for 95% of the people? Yeah. I just think that there are psychological vulnerabilities that get exploited and it's just far too easy. So what I mean by that is, if my mother wasn't a heroin addict, okay, with 75% of American adults are overweight or obese, not all of them had a mother who was a heroin addict. Fair. However, I think what's happening is that we are psychologically vulnerable. We're lonelier than ever. We're more anxious than ever. We're more stressed than ever. And you've got the drive-through on your way to work where you can get the 600-calorie Frappuccino. And it's like, it's just a small thing you do for you every day. It doesn't cost a ton of money. You're not being selfish and not, taking time away from driving your kid to baseball practice. It's your treat. It's your thing. And it smashes out of your dopamine center. And for a moment you feel great. And it's something to look forward to. And it's this little bit of control in your day. You're being exploited. Your psychological vulnerability in that moment is being exploited by food that is designed to do it. So can I get the woman off the Frappuccino for 30 days? Yeah, but maybe she has a bad day and the cigarette is there or the drink is there or the 500-calorie Frappuccino is there. And people turn to it. And then once they do, they get into that whole like, oh, I got a flat tire. Let me slash all 4 other tires because I f***ed up so bad. It's beyond repair. So much of this is psychological with weight loss and we don't ever talk about it. But it is. So much of it is about what's going on in their head and their heart and why they're eating too much food or bad for you food. And you're not going to find it in the paper by a PhD. You might from my mom's a Satiety. She's a doctor of psychoanalysis. She'll explain it to you far better than I can. But I hope so. But again, with a 95% success rate, it's not panning out.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of these obese people are sitting down and consciously saying, oh, I'm going to pig out and eat that whole pizza.
No way. No.
Like they're not sitting down and thinking that. They're not sitting down and saying, I am a glutton and here we go. Here comes another McFlurry. It's not, and that's why it can be so hard because even that would come back to like almost an unconscious bias in some ways to their own like little addictions that they feel they just don't. They know they exist, but it's an altered state of consciousness in some ways where
100%.
They probably don't realize how much they're actually taking in, for one. They don't realize like the scale at which it's happening. They don't realize that some days it might not be that much more than their maintenance calories, but other days it might be a ridiculous amount more. And there are these little rewards you set for yourselves, these little, like, when you're fit, you call them a cheat meal, which is still kind of language because you can also do a lot of damage with it.
That's why I don't do cheat days.
You can do
ever.
I'll digress for a second. I have been able to maintain my body composition significantly better by just eating good, wholesome food every day. And sometimes that means it's a little bit of like spaghetti or something, but it's like a wholesome real food versus like in gluten-free spaghetti and usually a lentil pasta. But the point is that like before it would be like restrict, and then
crazy
cheat day. And then like
I did that on Biggest Loser too, by the way. Bad idea.
Oh, that's and it was
disaster, psychological disaster, physiological disaster.
10,000 calories, something like, and you actually, wow, if I look at the calories over the course of the week, I am much better off to just
wiped out all that.
Have a half a chocolate bar every day and call it a day versus that.
I stopped that years ago because of the simple math of it. The next one is, this is so evil, is the obesity is a disease narrative. And I don't know if you know the history of this. So back in 2013, the American Medical Association put together a panel of their own experts to determine whether or not obesity unto itself is a disease. And they came back with their findings that said, no, it's an adaptation. And yet they did it anyway. Now, why? Obviously, so you can charge insurance for, if a doctor has a conversation about obesity with the patient, they can charge more to Medicare for the visit. Like, they'll pay for the devices, they'll pay for the drug. And I'm not opposed to that. That doesn't bother me. Like, great. I want people to get all the help they need. However, the reason the narrative is so nefarious is because if you tell that person you're talking about on the couch, right, that just ate the piece of pizza, the whole pizza, you have a disease, you fundamentally disempower that human being. Yeah. There's no picking yourself up by your bootstraps if I've taken off your boots. And it sounds amazing. My God, it's like I've been beating myself up over this. I've been calling myself pathetic and lazy, and none of that is real. None of that is true. None of that is right. But people do that. They secretly hate themselves and blame themselves and beat themselves up. So the minute I come along with this narrative of, you have a disease, then I'm like, oh, I have no self-agency. There's none of this. I play no role in this. I am a victim of this situation, which feels great up until the point that you're completely disempowered to make a change. Enter drugs and surgeries and this and that, right?
Yeah, it's a like hedonistic, almost like pleasure-seeking behavior, like vicious cycle.
Completely.
And then it opens up the door to, well, it's okay. Like there's always drugs to make me feel a certain way, or there's always, and it's just, you end up, it's just a cycle that'll just continue to repeat itself.
It's wild. And then if anybody turns around and says, hey, that's not true, the conversation is shut down by utilizing the shame game. Yeah. Fat shamer. I'm like, fat shamer. If you go back 20 years and read an article about me in the New York Times, like a profile piece, I would be the messiah to people that are overweight, right? The non-judgmental, empowering, loving, messiah that believes in these people. If you read a piece about me in the New York Times now, fat shaming, ignorant, disgusting piece of human, what's changed? Not me. No. It's the narrative. And by the way, I'm not all good and I'm not all bad, obviously. But there's so much money wrapped around keeping people sick that fat, sick, and nearly dead, that the minute you try to have these conversations, there's that shame game to shut you, fat shamer. Then the minute I'm like, guys, we don't need these drugs to lose weight. There's a lot of side effects. Let's look down the road at where this goes. You plateau on these drugs. You get off of them. Studies show us you're gaining the weight back, and then say, oh, you're shaming people for using these drugs. People could die from obesity. I'm like, wait a minute. I just said that, and you called me a fat shamer 5 minutes ago. That's why trying to bring people back to common sense, and in all honesty, maybe stripping away some of the stuff that you and I like, of how much there's 100 supplements on the table. You know what I mean? Like, how long are we in the sauna today? I do all of it. Trust me, the cold plunge and the 11 minutes and the Soderbergh principle. I saw that episode of Huberman. Like, I'm with you. But for the average human, like I will take like calories in, calories out, try to eat whole food and move as much as you can, do the things you like, sleep. I swear to God, I'll take it. Like, I'll go down the rabbit hole with you on all of it personally, but with the average person, and I don't mean that in an insulting way, but like, we're fighting for baby steps.
If there was one thing that you could do differently with the contestants now, knowing what you know now with your experience, at the end, after they've already lost the weight, what would it be?
I would have to change the game. That's the problem. I didn't have the power to change any of it. I would add a therapist in. There would be no eliminations. I'm fine with them quitting, because that's real life. People quit in real life. Like, that's, you quit. You can't handle it. You quit. You're not ready. That's okay. But the eliminations, you're ejecting them from their own healthy journey. That doesn't make sense. You need a therapist there to help them deal with the deeper issues. They shouldn't be losing money for weight. That's fundamentally a catastrophe. Because who doesn't want $100,000? So you're getting, in the case of Rachel Fredrickson, she got unhealthily thin. For me personally, that's the thing. I wouldn't change a thing. And if you ask me, well, what about this or what about that? I'll explain it to you. Like, well, you yelled at them. Okay. I yelled at them in particular incidents for particular reasons. So for example, when they would come to Biggest Loser, I needed to facilitate 3 things as quickly as possible because they could go home in a week. So number 1, I needed them to feel the pain of how they were living. Because if it is not painful enough doing what you're doing, you're not going to be motivated to change. Changing is work and it's sacrifice. I need to make this more painful than the work and the sacrifice. And they just go numb. It's like a Pink Floyd song. They're comfortably numb. It's Thoreau. The masses of men lead lives of, desperate. Oh God. The masses of men lead lives of. It's like desperate something. I know this quote. It's in one of my books, and I can't even recall it for you right now. I need my second coffee. But the bottom line is that they just kind of like they're sleepwalking through life, and I'm like. Hard, like that's not even a big enough smash. It's like right away, feel the pain of this physically, emotionally. Your kids are worried you're gonna die. They cry themselves to sleep. Feel that pain. Like your wife is worried you're gonna abandon her with nothing. She doesn't know how she's gonna pay the bills. Feel the pain of that. You cannot get through 15 seconds on the stairs without vomiting. Feel that. Like you want it to hurt. I want it to hurt you so much that you will move. I don't give a what you think of me. That needs to hurt more than the change. The second piece, you are not a victim of this. Yes, in your life, you've been a victim. I get it. Life sucks and it's unfair. Maybe you were incested. Maybe your father was an alcoholic and he used to beat you. I know all of it sucks and it's brought you here, but at the end of the day, you've responded to it by making this choice. Did you make this choice because at one point it meant your psychological survival? Yes, you did. But now you're perpetuating the abuse with this choice, and it's your choice to make a different choice. If they can't take responsibility for it, they can't make a change. That's 2. And 3 is an accomplishment. I need something that they've accomplished that breaks this prison of what they think they're capable of. I'm the funny fat guy. I'm the weak, lazy one. I was always picked last in PE. I've never been a runner. Then you're going to run a 5K. That's what you're going to do. Like, you have to give them that accomplishment because it isn't, I just love myself. It's not an SNL skit with Stewart, whatever the hell his name is, where you just love yourself more. That's not a thing. You have to give people a real experience, a reality where they've been successful and they can believe, where they go, oh my God, if I could do this, what else can I do? Those 3 things. And I don't give a flying what had to happen to make those 3 things happen. That's what I did. I regret nothing. I did everything for a reason. And my only thing that I'm sorry about is the format of the show, and should I or should I not have benefited off of things I knew were wrong, like not having a shrink, like having them lose weight for money. It was a constant fight, and I still profited off of that platform. And honestly, Thomas, I don't know. Because without being on it, I wouldn't be where I am. And it's like, it's that which nourishes me also destroys me. I don't know. Has it limited me in my career? Of course. Were there things I think were wrong? Of course. Did I have the power to change them? I didn't. Did I profit off of them? I did. And when it got too much, when Rachel Fredrickson walked down that stage looking dangerously unhealthy, I quit permanently. And I did not train her. I didn't advise her. I didn't guide her. But I profited off of the platform that allowed that to happen, and I quit.
Where can everyone find you?
Sorry. All things Jillian will exist on JillianMichaels.com.
And I love what you said, and I'll kind of end with that as something that's always been really important to me too, is the willingness to change needs to be stronger than the desire to stay the same. And that goes for anything in life.
100%.
Thanks, Jillian.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.